Thanks again for joining in. I could not have asked for a better panel to brainstorm on this topic. We have with us Rohit Kumar, Head of Finance, Shared Services and Digital Transformation at Edelweiss Financial Services, and Narayanan Pichai, Manager of IT and heading the Finance Digital Transformation at Philips, and Deepak Kumbat, Director of Shared Services, leading the Automation and Transformation Initiatives at Rambol. So as we have a power-packed agenda, so I'll dive right in. As you would have heard, Niste talked about the various automation trends and how automation is becoming synonymous with the digital transformation initiative at any enterprise. So I'll kick off the panel discussion with a more macro question. So we are seeing that there is an immense need to orchestrate between a lot of scenarios between automation, data transformation, process reengineering, and workflows to truly unleash the value at any enterprise. So Deepak, if I can get started with you, you have been doing this for many years now. So how are you approaching towards such initiatives at Rambol?
So thanks for asking this question. I think this technology is slowly becoming more and more unavoidable, so to say. And whenever new technology or enhancement is kind of launched and becomes a practice in the industry, you don't have much choice. So as I say quite regularly in my forums that I interact, that when a new technology rolls over, there are two choices. You can be part of a road roller or you can be part of the road. Because technology is making such a large impact that if you don't ride it, then you certainly become incompetitive with the market. So I think this discovery, everything was there for a long time now, this process, but over the last few years, it has gained such a momentum that we have now started to talk at a macro level. Earlier, when the shared services were there or outsourcing centers were there, we were just talking wall to wall, which is the process that the center manages. So we were looking at that. But now the spectrum is quite wider. We are looking wing to wing engagement of the entire process to add more value to the entire organization. So earlier, when we started this journey, we were only talking about accounts payable. Now we are talking about to pay. So that has become so important, and it is important to embrace that. Moving a pin makes a difference, but if you have a large scale, moving a pin make a huge difference to the entire process. And add to that, we are now, all the projects that we are doing are more centric towards the customer. What value does it add? So we are incorporating more customer thoughts before we kind of start the process. And I think that's the difference between where we were maybe 5 years back and we are now. So we are doing a lot of things at Rambol, including robotic process automation is of course a very conventional mode of doing automation now. But then we are also using some citizen development tools like Power BI, Power Pivots, so as to and it becomes very important now because the ERPs that we have, changing the ERPs becomes very difficult and it's very expensive. So we have these tools in place where they can easily cater to the changing matrix organization. We no more are conventional organization charts and the market cuts across the region and the countries and the products. So it is the dynamic data is more required. And we are, of course, slowly moving away from the requirement of time-based reporting to the real-time reporting, which essentially means that we will have to have these plug-in tools so that we can, anybody is not dependent on anybody, and more service portals are now becoming relevant. People can click on the information and get those details as and when they require. So all these dynamics which is happening around us, and of course the COVID has changed a lot of things because now people are working from home, and there are more requirements because there is more pressure on the bottom line other than the revenue. So we want to be more efficient, we want to be more precise in the information, and we want to be quicker. So all this is kind of enhancing the need of technology, and of course this conventional mode of crowdsourcing and tool-based data mining that you're talking about are becoming very, very relevant.
Great, great. Thanks, Deepak, for sharing this, and love the analogy there. So if I can bring Rohit now. So Rohit, you've been leading finance transformation across the technology stack of HIF, like RPA, NLP, and chatbots. So what is the approach for process discovery for automation at your enterprise?
Thanks, Dushan, bringing me into this discussion. So I will take you back some 6-7 years ago when in my previous organization, which is the largest retail company in Middle East and India. So there my board has asked me for the entire finance transformation. So at that point of time, I don't have any other technology tool to initiate the transformation. So at that point of time, the easiest way is to creating a shared services. And the creation of the shared services is keeping in view of the FTE productivity. And then the entire consolidation of all your processes which are fragmented into different countries is bringing at one places so that you can do your process transformation at one places. So that is how I have started my journey in 2014 with the entire creation of the shared services, and then getting the productivity benefit from my outsourcing partner. So that was the initiation at that point of time. During the course of the journey, then we did so much process transformation by consolidating and the creation of all the standard processes and elimination of certain processes. In 2016, end of 2016, we discovered the RPA technology, and that we bring into the picture and purely into our AP processes, wherein at that point of time, there are so many people who are sitting around and doing the manual punching of the invoices, taking information from that. So we have introduced the OCR, and further it has upgraded to the cognitive OCR, so that the automatically all the invoice data can be fetched and put it into your workflow system. So those manual impact has been gone. Then we introduced the RPA to download all the utility invoices and getting all the information and posting into your ERP. So that gives us a lot of efficiency in the entire manual processing, which typically at that point of time, AP process was completely manual processes. And then further in mid of 2018, so the need for the entire procurement transformation came into the picture, wherein there was a huge buying of a capex item is approximately more than 2 billion to 3 billion, and different 15 brands going to a same set of the buyers for their own requirement. And they are getting the different prices from that same buyer because every one brand is not speaking to the another brand. So the entire procurement transformation need is there. And then we have started the journey of the introduction of source to procure to pay by introducing Oracle Fusion. And this gives us a huge benefit in terms of your supplier onboarding to your entire consolidation of your entire procurement bucket and creating kind of a catalog buying and approaching. So you are consolidating all your requirements. So you have a much larger benefit to go to your further buyer, this supplier, to negotiate on the volume discount, and you are creating a catalog. So any indirect procurement is happening. So you have a catalog and you know how much procurement for a particular year you have to make. So those kind of a visibility, plus in terms of supplier payment also. So your entire procurement is happening through PR and PO processes. Your three-way GRN is happening, plus your GRN is automatically flipping as an invoice through the ERS module. and supplier is uploading their invoices for your tax compliances, and three-way matching is happening, and the information is going back to the supplier for their payment confirmation. So those kind of a complete automation of this procurement process has happened, and it has given a huge benefit. Like in terms of value, it has given a benefit of almost 20% of your entire procurement cost, with the greater visibility, and so much analytics is around that. So that was on the procurement processes, and similarly on your close processes also. At that point of time, it used to happen by 20th or 21st of the next month. But with the introduction of RPA technology, you can eliminate all those manual activities, and bringing all this new technology like ClickView for the reporting, NLP for this entire CFO deck creation or the board presentation, which can give you the right set of the data analytics. So these are that is how the entire technology or transformation journey I have come across.
Sure. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for sharing these insights on the manual approach and the benefits around the same. Narayanan, coming to you, you have also led touchless close, RP, and analytics in the RTR function at Philips. And from our research too, we know that some of the process discovery tools are leveraged at your enterprise. So can you throw some light on what has been the extent of its use in terms of the tool leading the processes for identification, and what kind of finance processes have you assessed with this approach?
Sure. Thanks, Dushan. So before I answer your question, right, I'll just give you a background so that you'll be, the attendees will also be able to relate to your question and my answer. Where Philips started the journey with the transformation, I wouldn't call RPA journey, I would call it as a transformation journey, right? There is a reason why I mentioned that as a transformation journey. So Philips started with the transformation journey in 2017, right? And at that point in time, initially it was conceived as a RPA transformation journey. And then later we started realizing that the focus should be on transformation and not on the adoption of RPA, right? The technology should not be a driver for the change. It should be the functional change which should be initiated, which drives the technology that we are going to adopt, right? So initially there were a lot of learnings in 2017, 2018. There were a lot of mistakes we learned over a period. At that point in time, almost all the processes that we were looking at, that we were considering for automation, it was considered manually. There were a couple of tools that were available in the market. I'm referring to 2017, 18, early 2019 also, where there were not a lot of matured process mining tools that were available in the market. So we were looking at the processes, and then what we were doing is like what Deepak was mentioning. We were looking at it in a piecemeal approach. But we started expanding it as an end-to-end process. When I say end-to-end, that is, for example, you refer to touchless or close. It's a MEC process, the month-end closure process, where we started with a month-end closure. It was a problem area that we had. We started identifying the problem areas. We were not going around looking for the process to be automated. We were looking out for problem areas that need to be improved upon. Right. So one of them was the closure of MEC. How do I enable a smooth closure of MEC? So that was taken as a theme. Likewise, there were multiple other themes that started driving our process identification. All right. So we started looking backwards and then started looking at it end to end, and then started identifying a lot of opportunities that could be considered for this transformation. Again, I'm trying to stress transformation, right? The reason is we were applying the lean methodology within Philips. Within Philips, we have something called SR approach, which is elimination, simplification, standardization, and then automation. So we were looking out for things that can be easily eliminated, right? Manually, we were looking at it. It could be like things that were done in a particular region was much better than other regions. So can we eliminate certain activities, simplify, take one process, standardize it, and then see how the other regions can adopt to it. So things like that were considered, right? And then finally, when it came to automation, RPA was not the first option, right? the idea was, how do I do certain things in the inline application? For example, if I can enable certain functionalities in the inline application, for example, if I can do some certain things in SAP, or if I can then do certain things through Power BI, which is a standard solution for that particular problem, or through other reporting solutions, right? There are many other inline applications within finance functions, in R2R, O2C, in P2P, across, right? We were doing it across. So for this particular thing, as a MEC closure process, we were looking at it end to end, and then we applied the ESA, and then we were able to identify opportunities where we were able to automate certain things, we were able to eliminate certain things, and then we were able to, within automation, we were able to do certain things in SAP and certain things within RPA also, right? So this particular thing, we were able to implement it. And while we were doing it, we were exploring, that is in 2019, later 2019, 2020, we were trying to explore the latest process mining tools that were available and trying to see how that could help, right? And even at that time, we were not successful, because that was done independently as just as a tool. It was getting adopted, saying that, hey, there is a process mining tool, why don't we adopt the process mining tool and then see what are the opportunities that it can reveal, right? So that was not also giving us the benefit. So what we started to do in the later part of 2020, 2021 is okay, before I commenting on this, like our journey was, the major portion of the journey was between 2017 and 2020 end, where we were able to automate, there is, again, through this, we were able to achieve a savings of around 1 million plus hours, right? And within that, 50% of the savings was coming through, that is applying the ESS, that is elimination, simplification, standardization, and then the remaining 50% was coming from the automation, which includes RPA and other things. So the point I just wanted to stress is, we were not following or we were not adopting RPA as just another tool. Like I think Mohan was mentioning about taking as a hammer and looking around what are the nails available. So we started to move away from that, and then that is RPA was used only in the areas where we need to apply. So 50% was coming from non-RPA, and then the remaining 50 was coming from the RPA, right? This is one key, which is a key learning, which I wanted to pass it on to all of them, saying that please don't apply the technology as a first thing, right? Look at process transformation and then bring in the technology which will enable, right? So at a later point in time, we started to look at process mining, how process mining could enable us. And there is the initial steps was also like the process mining was just applied without there is looking at which problem areas to solve. But at a later point in time, we started taking the MEC process, which was automated, and then we started applying the machine learning, process mining on top of it now. Right. Even though we have automated, it was not 100% standardized. There were a lot of opportunities for improvement. So the point is, we were able to capture the low-hanging fruits through the manual automation, and then we started applying the process mining tool. Now we exactly know what are the deviations that we have. There is how many business units are not following the standard processes. How many regions are not following the standard processes. So the thing that we are doing is, with the process mining tool, the outputs that we are receiving now, we are better equipped to consume the data, right? If we are going to use process mining as a first step, it's going to be tough for us to consume the output of the data, because not always we would be knowledgeable enough to get the whatever recommendations that are coming out of the tool. We might not be skilled enough, right? So the learnings that were coming out of the manual execution, manual identification, was helping us to consume the data that was coming out of the process mining tools. Now, the blend of these two is what is working out for us really well, right? There are few other processes where we have started adopting, and then it has started to yield much more benefit. So the low-hanging fruits was consumed. Now, the higher benefits, we are applying the machine learning, the process mining tools.
Okay. Yeah. So thanks for sharing the details, and this feels like an amazing journey for Philips. I would like to call Rohit again. So Rohit, like you had talked about the manual approaches for identifying the processes for automation. So for the various finance functions, what are the various challenges for your approach, which you would have seen at Edelweiss?
Yeah, Dushan. So first you have to identify the problem area and then apply for the solution for that particular area. So in case of, as I mentioned in my last thing, that first we have identified the area of the procurement, and then we have applied the right technology in combination of your cloud product along with the bolt-on technology of the AI-based RPA to bring the entire end-to-end efficiency of any of the processes. Similarly, for the month-end closure, first you have to identify the problem area, whether this problem lies with your entire reconciliation process or the intercompany transactions or your accruals or your subledger close. And depending on the right solution, so set up the right solution, bringing the right workflow system and the intelligent close calendar management system, you can bring the entire efficiency plus bringing into the RPA technology in that, so that your entire provisioning and the reconciliation challenges will be completely manual effort will be eliminated. And that is how, because 90% of your accruals is happening based on your logic-based calculation, and wherein the AI-based RPA can completely eliminate those kind of challenges, wherein around 10 to 20% your ERP also offers for the automation of your standard journals. Similarly, in case of the reconciliation or the intercompany transaction, if you bring the entire right workflow system wherein both the party can come into one place and the integrated entry can be passed. So those kind of elimination can be happen. And that is how, with the implementation of the right technologies, along with the bolt-on help of the RPA, AI-based RPA, it completely eliminate. And as I mentioned earlier, the closing calendar was happening by 15th or 20th of the month. I brought down it to 3 days, 3 calendar days. And along with that, then you have again come with this entire reporting part. So for reporting also, we have so many tools available in the market, along with your budgeting tools and the reporting tools, wherein I implemented the ClickView, wherein it can be a completely customizable tool, wherein your entire stakeholder can go, and it could be a self-service. So now the situation is, for the reporting, earlier the financial reporting or financial numbers, always there is a dependency on the finance team that they will just calculate or crunch the number and then give it to the different business stakeholder. But with the help of these technology, now it is kind of a self-service tool, wherein whatever the financial number, because your entire ERP is one source of truth, and the integration with the reporting tool, all the stakeholders can customize their own set of the data requirement, and you can it could be a access control also, and they can take whatever number, the financial number they want to take, and further it will be, can be a drill down at your store level or branch level, your segment level, your product level, all kind of a financial number can be generated. And that too, with these real help, this kind of you can start now generating your monthly close to on the real-time close.
Okay. Yeah.
Because now the future is not bringing to the month-end close by 3rd or 5th of the calendar days, but now it is on the daily close. That is how we are progressing for the financial closing.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thanks for sharing this, Rohit. So, Deepak, like you would have also automated and transformed similar processes to one which Rohit was mentioning. So I would like to know, while you are automating the various F&A processes at Rambol, what are the typical challenges when you are trying to identify the process for such transformation? Like there can be workforce related challenges, enterprises, or process related. So can you throw some light on the same?
Yeah, I think I have, you rightly said that we have done these automation as well, as Rohit mentioned. And I can quickly summarize 2 biggest challenges that we have. The number one challenge is people don't try to make a business case, and they don't understand the business case as such, and they try to I mean, what they try to do is they are trying in a hurry to implement RPA without optimizing the process. So I think any RPA is successful only when there is a very standard approach followed, post optimization of process using the basic process excellence methodology. Like process should be standard. If I manage 10 countries today or 15 countries today, I can't implement RPA on those 15 countries when the process for different countries vary by nature. So it may be the accounts payable, but if there are differences between 15 countries, my business case will make sense only when all the processes are first look similar. It may be different at some point of time, but at least 80-85% standardization has to be achieved before an RPA needs to be implemented. So that's number one. Number two is so the developers will have little knowledge on what we want, and they are basically dependent on the process owners to build the logic for the bot. So what people miss is, say, for example, if I am building a bot or one of my direct reports are building a bot, they forget that this bot will be, this is not a current bot, or this will not only be used for the current process, but they have to look into the future and scalability of the bot to the further expansion of the shared services. For example, one of the roles of the shared services today is they onboard newly acquired organization onto the same platform. Or today, if I am serving Nordics or maybe Europe, and tomorrow I am including US, then I need to understand that will the same model go on the US as well? I may not have the 100% detail, but at least I should have the visibility to build the bot by that logic. Or in the sense that I should compartmentalize bot in such a process that when I trying to implement on US, I can use some of the modules of the bot and only build a specific part of it when the US gets implemented, rather than hard coding everything which is not scalable. So these are two of the biggest challenge that I have observed, that people don't take care take care of it. And I think that is why it is important that we need to have a proper change board management implementing the RPA. The design authority should be there, who should take care or approve the any bot implementation, rather than implementing or developing bot in silos. So we have built a change board, which I am part of, and I approve all the processes to see all these elements are considered or not while giving a go ahead, before giving a go ahead.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing these. From our customer conversations also, we've seen similar challenges, and these are across, I'll say, a majority of enterprises. And while those conversations, we also hear a lot about process fragmentation, where several different business units are doing the same type of process, but they do it in a very different way. And Rohit also had mentioned about it. So Nayanan, I am sure you would be facing similar things for finance processes at Philips also. So how do you manage process fragmentation while you are doing process identification or process discovery for automation?
Sure, Dushan. So, Dushan, before I answer the question, right, adding on to Deepak, whatever he mentioned, right, in terms of the issues that we have with the change management adoption of the RPA or RPA as a solution, two things to be taken care from my perspective, which are key, is one, the ownership of the process doesn't move away from the process team, right? The RPA team, based on the structure, it might be the same team, different teams who owns the process, owns the automated process. but the core ownership of the process doesn't move away from the process team who was doing it manually, because we need to take care of the audit related requirements, which is also overlooked in many cases, right? These are learnings that we had in the initial days, and we had brought in a lot of process to make sure that the audit requirements are brought in, and many of the manual controls are modified as a IT automated controls in the RPA world. So these two things are overlooked, and this is something that is something good to reiterate right from the beginning in the process, in the change management, so that we don't have these pitfalls when anyone new starts their journey, right? So that is one, right? The second one, within Philips, one good thing that we had done is the functional transformation had happened. The GCC was established in different parts of the world. Regional centers, global centers were established. Process was moved in. There were not many local siloed processes, right? So that one basic problem was taken care, right? But with that being said, obviously there were silos. There were a lot of issues that were manual. Different ways of doing the same process existed across the world. But what we had done was we were looked at certain regions, certain GCCs, and then started looking at that as a base, right? And that is, we studied multiple regions, looked at which process would be ideal, tried to work with the regions, made sure one of the processes is kind of a standard, automated the same, and then started that is pulling in each of the regions, each of the business units into the standard process. That way, it was much easier for us to adopt to this one standard solution that was defined, right? But defining that standard solution, obviously we had to make sure all the regions, all the stakeholders, right? Stakeholders was involved. And then we had to end up with deciding the right process, which is going to work across the globe. Again, it was not easy, but this was one of the approach that was followed from our end, Dushan.
Okay. Thanks, Narayanan. And I would also like to understand from you whether you are implementing a digital twin of an organization at Philips, or are you in the process of implementing such an initiative? And for our audience, I would also like to explain a digital twin of an organization is a dynamic virtual replica of an actual process at your enterprise, with simulations to compare the as-is process in its ideal state and also uncover bottlenecks.
Sure.
Yeah.
So, Dushan, like again, the same thing, right? Right now with the process mining, I was explaining about the MEC closure process, right? We have, again, this is from R2R, but we have it in other domains also. But again, taking the same example, the MEC process is getting extended to be much more touchless, right? Again, today, the MEC process was improved, and then we were able to reduce the closure time from 6 days to 4 days. But the idea is, how do we move towards touchless close, right? Again, to Rohit's comment, like we are looking out for not a daily closure, but the month-end closures to be much more smoother, maybe reduce it by another 2 more days. I'm talking more in a realistic scenario, which can be possible, right? So there we have started applying the process mining, where we are able to simulate the scenario of there is what are the areas where we have the problems, how do we improve the scenario and then become touchless, right? So the process mining tool is able to provide us an idea in terms of what are the things that we need to do so that the flow is kind of getting improved. And we are trying to simulate the scenario to see whether it is going to work or not, right? And then there is, based on how it's going to converge, we'll be able to automate that particular scenario or improve that particular process, right? So this is where we are trying to use the process mining tool in the context of one of the automated process and see how it can coexist or how it can enable to do much better.
Okay. Thanks for sharing this. And I know we might be at almost the top of the hour. So I would like to move on and know from Rohit on how do you see the future roadmap of process discovery for your enterprise, specifically for finance processes? Will it continue to be manual, or will it be highly tool-based, or like Nessa was mentioning about the hybrid approach of a combination of both?
So it will be a combination of both. It will be a tool-based as well as the manual kind of because identifying the problem is the core area wherein in each of the processes, you have to first identify the problem and then go for the process discovery and find the right tool to implement, which can give you the right solution for that. And that is how for my last 6-7 years of experience of my transformation journey, I used to do that. And I get the right benefit out of that. Because I can share one of my example with my entire RP journey creation, wherein I went ahead and implemented all the RP on the desktop versions and implemented that, and it was successfully running, and we are getting a wow benefit like the reduction of 80% of the manual effort or 90% of the manual effort. But suddenly, once you scale up your entire implementation, you are getting so much disruption. And then you are running around all those desktops to correct those problems, either because of the people created or with the hardware technology driven problems. Then it cannot be scalable, and we have to somewhere take a step back and think of what could be because if you want to scale up your entire COE, then this cannot be that your entire technology people are running around with the different desktops. Then we gone back to implemented the UiPath orchestrator and moved the entire bot to the Microsoft Cloud Azure. And that is how with the RPA COE, you can start scheduling your entire task, monitoring the each and every and correcting all those errors. And with those kind of a step, taking a step back and then going to a different kind of a solution, then I was able to scale up in much faster way than it used to. And that is how I come across and then implemented across different function as well, not only limited to the finance, but other areas also in this entire RPA journey.
Yeah. Thanks, Rohit. So, Deepak, Rohit talked about the implementation part of it. So, but what do you see as the future approach for identification of processes for automation? Will you be looking to adopt a process mining tool at Ramble, or is it too early for it?
See, it's a very evolving journey, and you may, as you also mentioned, that the automation tool, not many organizations are using as of now, but many organizations are also going through the hybrid way. So using those tools are totally dependent on the nature of the product or nature of the project rather. So for example, we did a project which is basically on the tech side of it, where we are to dig information on VAT recoveries from different authorities across the globe.
Yeah.
So what we did is through our system, we created using Power BI dashboard information where we can pull this information from the system. So I will think that that is a tool-based discovery that we did. Because this is going to be a recurring one. We just set up a format table and designed the tool so that we can extract this information year on year or month on month. So I think it is not about using the tool-based discovery or the manual discovery, either or. It is quite dependent on the nature of the project that you are running. But I should also say that whatever tools you use, the human factor can never be negated. So you will still need those workshop with the process excellence team. You will still need to involve the stakeholders. And also it just depends on how much detailed information do you require, and then you can include the process mining tools wherever based on the nature of the project as well.
Okay, yeah. No, this is great, Deepak. Yeah, I think none of us can actually deny the role of manual approach. And yes, well, like Nesta was also stressing, and you also rightly said, we'll continue to see a more hybrid approach and rather than a purely tool-based approach.
Yeah.
We have some interesting questions from our audience also, so I would request our panelists to throw some light on the same. So, Deepak, the first question is for you. So, as you are one of the senior leaders in your organization, so they want to understand on what is the role of senior leadership such as yours in the overall process discovery methodology in terms of decision making. Like you were saying, you are part of a team which oversees the whole thing. So can you share some more details around that?
Sure. So, yeah, I think leaders have a larger role to play because I think the most important part of this process is not execution, but to prioritize what makes sense at the current situation. So, you will always, at any point of time, if I have 10 people reporting to me, which they are managing different domains in different countries, so they will have their own priorities. So, as a leader, I should be able to understand that what makes more sense or impact on the overall operations of the organization as such. So in pockets, it will be easy that, okay, this process is important because of XYZ reasons, or this process is important because of ABC reasons. But we will always have constraint of budgets. We will always have constraint of resources and the time that they can devote or the business can devote on it. So we will have to have some success criteria or some parameters basis on which we make a decision. I think leaders like me plays a very important role there. Of course, on the other part or the later part of when the project is getting implemented, reviews of project, what designs are being developed, we play a role there as well. But I think the most valuable part is which project to start and which to hold back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes in the role that I am playing, it is very important to, rather than say what to do is not an important question, what not to do becomes more critical.
Yeah.
So,
No, absolutely makes sense, Deepak, and that's where, like you said, your role comes in because you are ultimately the decision maker on what processes goes ahead and what not. Yeah. Yeah. So our next question is for you, Narayanan. The audience wants to know, how do you decide at your organization quick wins versus long-term gain, and how do you consider the pros and cons for the same?
Sure. So again, at the end of the day, it boils down to the business benefits, right? So any opportunity that we look at, we look out for hard savings, right? And there has to be a hard savings. There is certainly, we do consider soft savings where if it is for compliance reasons or that is audit purposes, but we look for hard savings. So the savings comes into the picture first. Based on that, whatever use cases, right, where we look at risk to reward ratio kind of thing, where every use case, what is the time it takes for us to implement versus the savings that it is going to yield. So based on that, like what Deepak was mentioning, there are reviews that we conduct at different levels, filter at different levels, and then we take it forward for implementation.
Okay.
So essentially, we need to look at the ROI for every use case, right? To your question, investing maybe 100 hours and then getting a benefit of 1 FT, 3 FT, 5 FT versus investing 6 months and then getting maybe 10 FT, right? I would rather spend time on the first one where it's going to help me see the results much faster.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and it makes sense to actually stress on those kind of processes. Yes. In the interest of time, I'll just take one last question. So, Rohit, the next question is for you. So, in terms of creating a pipeline of processes where you will have, let's say, 10 processes which are due for automation or transformation. So, is the pipeline of processes created via your GCC, or is it centrally controlled via your headquarters?
So generally, in my experience, it is centrally controlled. Like Deepak and Narayanan has also mentioned, because it's very critical to prioritize your automation journey or the transformation piece, and what should be the priority. And then it cannot be delegated to at the GCC level, but it always be centralized at the headquarter level, wherein the prioritization is very important in terms of evaluation of your each and every project's ROI, how much the break even is there, how much project cost is there. So those kind of evaluation. Further, any kind of a technology implementation, it always requires the board approval and the stakeholders and the entire organizational thought process building into the entire technology transformation. So in my view and what I experience in my journey also, it is always a headquarter centric, although the implementation can be further pushed down to the at the center levels.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think we are at the top of the hour. So I would like to thank all of you. Thanks Deepak, thanks Narayanan, and thanks Rohit for joining in today and for sharing such valuable insights. I'm sure our audience has received great facts and insights on the process discovery approach and your journey at your enterprise for the automation. Over to you, Anudeep. Thanks.